Hi Year 6 and welcome to our spring term week 3 of our English units. This term we're going to be looking at writing a review and a persuasive letter with this little chap and a hover bike. But to get us warmed up, we're going to do some sentence level stuff first. Have a little look at these questions. We need to identify what pros and cons are this week, so I want you to think about something a bit silly. What are the pros and cons of jam? Just pause the video a moment and think what would be the positives and the negatives of jam. Did you think about it? I wonder what we would benefit from with jam. I think probably its flavour most of all. Let's see what we've got here. When added to any item of food, it will make almost anything taste delicious. I think you can probably agree, most of you, that the sweet taste of jam improves any food product. The negative aspects of jams, it can be a little bit sticky. So let's have a think about that. If spilt whilst eating your breakfast, you may become stuck to your dining chair. So some pros and cons of jam there. I wonder whether they were the same as yours. Have a think about something else now. What about the pros and cons of false teeth? Now many of you, hopefully none of you, have had to experience having false teeth. Perhaps some of you know someone with false teeth though. False teeth have to replace our normal teeth when we no longer have our own. So what would be the benefits of having false teeth? Well, I guess if you didn't have any teeth, then having pretend teeth would be better than having no teeth at all. Let's have a look at this pro. Although you may not have your own pearly whites, false teeth may be a good alternative to avoid strange looks when you produce a gummy smile. Definitely an advantage, I think. The negative things about false teeth, though, have a think. I don't know, but I've seen quite a few YouTube videos where false teeth have fallen out, so I think falling out could be a negative aspect, so a con. Let's have a look. If they fall out, they could get damaged, not to mention how embarrassing this would be. Furthermore, it will cost money to get a new set of teeth. So there's definitely some pros and cons there. And that's what we're going to be thinking about today. The pros and cons of a bike. This is our hook today. You're going to be watching a short video now, and I want you to think about what would be the positives and the negatives aspect of this bike. You've got to imagine that Levitation International, which is the company that have produced this bike, have selected you to try out their new vehicle. You've been sent this hover bike to test it for a couple of weeks. You might have driven it to work, school, college, or gone shopping on it. Well, that says shopping. Check that spelling. You might have even driven it in different weather conditions. There's lots of possible things you may have done on this bike, and you've got to use your imagination about what would be the possible pros and cons, like we did with this warm-up activity, of riding a bike like this. Have a pause a minute. I want you to think about why it is important, if we're writing a review for a company, to draw out the positive aspects as well as the negative aspects. Well, hopefully you've thought about it. If you were a customer, you want to know what's good and what's bad about things. I'm sure you read on the websites that you go on to before you purchase something, some of the reviews that people write about things, and you want to know what's good and what's bad about it. So if you were a new company setting up a new business and you'd created this product, you'd want to know what was good and what was bad about it. What do you think the company would need to know about with the bike? Have a pause and have a think a moment. They'd want to know how well it drives, or hovers, perhaps in this case. They'd want to know its performance, what it was like to handle, whether or not it was easy to drive or not, whether or not you were able to get up to speeds that you wanted to. You'd want to know whether it was suitable for the use. Was there somewhere where you could put your school bag, for example, or your shopping, should you have used it for that? You'd want to know perhaps whether or not the customer thought the safety features were good enough, or whether there weren't any. You might review the fuel costs, or the fact that it was solar panelled, or some other form of environmentally friendly fuel was used, and that might be something to consider when you're reviewing the product. You might mention whether it's eco-friendly or not. You might talk about its comfort and whether or not you found it a comfortable ride, and what possibly the company might want to do to improve that if it wasn't comfortable. You might talk about its durability, whether or not it was sturdy, whether or not you damaged it in any way, or you felt it was made of strong materials. You'll also probably talk about its appearance. Perhaps it's considered to be stylish. You might have liked the colour. There might be some aspects of it that you found particularly futuristic, which would appeal to a modern society. And you might talk about the noise level or the air pollution that it produced. These are just some ideas of the sorts of thing that a review of a bike might cover. Now we're going to watch the video now so that you can take a look at these ideas and have a think. While you're watching the video, I want you to jot down the pros and cons and the possible things that someone might consider. The video clip is just to give you some ideas. You can make up your own ideas as to what would be positive and negative about this hover bike if you'd been able to try it for a few weeks. You can use your imagination as well. You need a pen and a paper, and you need to be ready to make some notes before I start the video. So if you haven't got those things ready yet, you probably want to pause the video now. Something else you need to consider before you start taking your notes is we're going to be using technical language today, and the technical language pertaining to a bike will include some of these words. The chassis, which is the frame that the vehicle is made of, the seat, the engine, the exhaust you might mention. You might talk about the lights, handlebars, brakes, manoeuvrability, difficult spelling there, whether it's aerodynamic or not, the control that you have. These are just some words that you might cover when you're talking about technical language pertaining to the bike. So think about that when you're making your notes. Okay, let's hope you've got your pen and paper ready, and we will watch the video. Now you may have written down some pros and cons similar to mine, or you may have them in different sections. Let's have a little look at what I wrote down as my positive aspects of the bike. So I said it was compact, it was small in size, thought it might be quite portable, you might be able to fit it into the boot of a car. You might talk about how it gives you an adrenaline rush when you first lift off the ground. Let's face it, most of our vehicles nowadays keep wheels on the ground, so to be able to fly would be quite amazing. You might talk about how lightweight it is and it was easy to manoeuvre or handle. Got a spelling in there that I need to check. It might be aerodynamic. You might have thought actually the design was really aerodynamic and really easy to fly through the air, cut through the air effortlessly. You might talk about its appearance and how it's state-of-the-art technology. That maybe you thought a positive aspect, its gleaming red paintwork. It was eye-catching, modern, stylish and sleek, all of the things that perhaps a modern driver might want to ride. It's a fun way to travel. Let's face it, there aren't many of these around at the moment. Useful to be able to fly over traffic jams, for example, and traffic congestion. So really quick to get to work, perhaps. Comfortable, might talk about having a well-cushioned or padded seat. And you might talk about its economy, the use of it, the using very little fuel. It might have been solar panelled or fueled using electricity or something more environmentally friendly. And you might have talked about it being useful in good weather. I don't know that I'd want to ride a bike like that in poor weather conditions, similar to a bike or a motorbike. The cons that you may have made a list of, you might have talked about the noise, that it sounds like an overpowered vacuum cleaner, or at worst, a rocket launch. You might think it's too noisy and that actually the noise pollution produced by such a vehicle is not good. You might talk about the fact that because it's lightweight, it's really difficult to control in high winds or heavy rain, and perhaps you might mention that you experienced that. Remember, you're making this up. You haven't actually experienced the hover bike, but you can come up with some creative ideas. You might, rather than saying it was easy to manoeuvre, you might talk about that it was really stiff to manoeuvre. The handlebars weren't easy, that there was the mechanism wasn't particularly easy to use. And you could make these things up. You wouldn't say both of those things, but these are things that you might want to consider. You could talk about how it was easy to crash into sky hazards, birds and lampposts and things, and therefore perhaps it needs some sort of warning system on it. You might talk about its storage or lack of for bags or shopping. I didn't see him wearing a helmet, and I didn't see any safety features like a seatbelt perhaps, so that might be something that you would want to mention if you thought that was relevant. So these are just some ideas of the pros and cons that you might have come up with, and you might have some better ones than those, and some very different ones. As a customer, you do need to explain in your review how you feel about the product coming to the market. And to emphasise those feelings, you probably want to mention some emotive language. Your reviewer, you are the reviewer, and the company will want to know what you found really good about the bike. And you can emphasise that by using emotive, positive language. Excellent, amazing, fantastic, superb are just some examples of the words you might use. Equally, when you come to mention the cons, you might use negative emotive language, such as terrible, disgraceful, dangerous perhaps, or annoying, and these words will help to emphasise the points that you're making in your review. Now today you are just writing the introduction and the positives paragraph. So this sheet is on the Google Drive, it's your review plan, and this is the top section that I want you to look at today, thinking about some of the things we've already mentioned, the emotive vocabulary, technical words. We haven't touched on subordinating conjunctions, but we will shortly. Your introduction is going to explain to your company why you're writing to them, how long you've tested the product for. You can make these things up, remember. Where did you drive it? And what will you tell them in this review? Remember, you are reviewing both the positives and the negatives, so you can say that there. The first section is all the positive elements of the bike, using your positive emotive language, and there's a few more ideas that I've popped in there. Sleek and stylish might be the first thing. The appearance, you might talk about being the envy of your friends. And I want you to start to develop some of these ideas with a little bit more information. You might mention that it's environmentally friendly. It might be solar powered. It might have minimal noise pollution, so the opposite to what I've put in the example of the cons. But remember, you're making this up, so you can make it whatever you want to. You might mention it's aerodynamic, that it soared effortlessly above the traffic jams. You perhaps might mention it halved your journey time. All of these things would be positive things if that's what you felt the bike did. I've given you a list of openers on the Google Drive, but here are some of the openers to get you started. So you're going to address it to Sir or Madam because you don't know the name of the person who is perhaps in charge of this section of the company receiving all of these reports and reviews. You're going to introduce why you're writing, because when you're writing a letter to anybody, your first sentence needs to explain why you're writing to them. I've got some examples here in red, and you can have a look at those. I've put them on the Google Drive for you to refer to them. I would like to thank you. I'm writing to explain. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. You can decide how you want to open your letter. And then you're going to tell them in that first paragraph what you've done. So recently I was asked to test this product. During the week that I had this product, you can explain the sorts of things you did to test it. And then you might want to point out here that you've identified several positive and negative elements, and that's what you're going to explain in your report. Here's an example of such a piece of writing. Dear Sir and Madam, Having been asked to test and review the latest design in travel technology, the Hoverbike, I would first like to thank your company for giving me this fantastic opportunity to ride the bike of the future. During the week that I had this product, I took it on several excursions to check its durability and functionality. There were several pros and cons of the bike, therefore I hope my review will help you to modify certain aspects before putting it on general sale to the public. The results of my assessments are explained in detail in this report. That's an example of an opening paragraph, or here's another one. Recently, your business, Levitation International, asked me if I would be willing to test out the company's brand new product, the Hoverbike 360. This was an exciting opportunity for me to test both my driving and reviewing skills, therefore I jumped at the chance to give your company my honest feedback on the product. In this review, I have outlined both the positive and negative aspects of the bike. Now, once you've done your introduction, you're going to think about all the positive aspects of the bike. So some useful openers here. Again, these are on the Google Drive on a Word document, so you can check those out and refer to them when you're writing your own. But what you're going to need to do is go back to your note-taking. And you're going to elaborate your ideas, make them more interesting, explain them with more reasons and technical vocabulary if you didn't include it when you were making the notes. You're going to need this bottom section of the planning sheet so that you've got some ideas for how you might open your sentences. Here, some words here so that you can replace your word hoverbike in case you keep repeating the same words. There's some synonyms there for hoverbike. And there's some examples of some technical language which you might find useful. Notably, one of the best features of the Hoverbike 360 was the fact that it was lightweight and therefore incredibly easy to manoeuvre and handle when flying. Moreover, the aerodynamic shape of the chassis allowed me to travel effortlessly at speeds of up to 40 miles per hour, soaring above the traffic congestion below, which halved my normal journey to work. So you can see here was my note, and here I've developed that into a couple of much better quality sentences to explain and elaborate on my ideas. Your task today then is to write the second paragraph as well and explain your pros in detail. Here's an example of one that I've done. Firstly, I would like to point out the advantages of this bike. There were lots of positive aspects which I need to inform you about. When I first unpackaged the Hoverbike 360, I was impressed to see its sleek and stylish design. Many of my friends and colleagues were envious of my new ride to work, and I was proud to be the owner of this futuristic and cool bike. In addition to the fantastic design, when I started up the solar-powered engine using the easy start-up push button, the engine purred gently into life. Consequently, I felt the noise pollution emitted by this bike was significantly preferable to the hairdryer sound of many mopeds on the market. Being extremely aerodynamic and having the ability to fly, this bike enabled me to soar over any traffic with ease, as well as being an exhilarating ride. Consequently, I was able to reach my destinations in half the normal travelling time, something which I feel many people would like to be able to do. Now, I've just put at the bottom here, you're going to finish this paragraph with a link sentence that takes us on to the negative aspects of the bike. So something along these lines: whilst this bike had some great features, I need to point out some flaws with the vehicle. Or, although this bike was amazing, you can finish the sentence, or whilst being an amazing product, I must point out. So you're going to link your ideas together just like you did when you wrote your non-chronological reports about the ancient Greeks back in the autumn term. So before you finish today, I would like you to go back to your writing, read through your introduction and your first paragraph all about the positive aspects of the bike, and I want you to go through this checklist and identify that you've done what you can to ensure that you've written a good quality piece of detailed writing. I hope you enjoyed today's task, and we'll watch a little bit more of the video later in the week. Good luck, Year 6, and I look forward to reading them.